Back to Dialogue. Ellis Koger here with you. We are currently in a holding pattern. We're waiting for our last guest, Isaac Wright, to join us to give us his thoughts on the executive order that came down. Just, of course, a highly controversial, highly incendiary subject, and that was children being separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexican border. Gabiezi. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, is this Isaac Wright?
This is he. How are you?
Not bad. How are you? We are live, sir, so thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
What was your thoughts when you finally heard about President Trump signing the executive order to keep families at the border together?
Well, I think the first thing was a concern for the 2,300 children that Trump has already separated from their parents. Trump set up this policy to separate children from their parents. Yet he said he couldn't fix it, only Congress could. Then yesterday tacitly admitted that wasn't true and revoked the policy going forward. But there's this gap that he did not address the 2,300 children who've already been separated from their parents. We're talking about, in some cases, 8, 9, 11-month-old babies who have been separated from their mothers and in some cases may not have seen them for 30 days, may not know where they are in the country, have had no contact, and there was nothing done. There's no acknowledgement of that or plan for how to reunite those kids. That's 2,300 children's lives at stake that the president failed to address, and so I'm hoping that we'll see something come on that soon. The other part of it is the ongoing sort of credibility gap with the administration, which I think hurts the likelihood of finding long-term immigration solutions. Mm-hmm. The president took such a strong stand that he tried to say this was a congressional issue, that he didn't create it, even though, obviously he created it a matter of weeks ago, and that he could do nothing about it, that it was all about Congress. And then, as said that as recently as Wednesday morning, and then Wednesday afternoon, signed an executive order which frankly wasn't even required because it was an administrative policy decision, but tacitly admitted, yes, this was his decision, his doing, his policy, he could change it. And I think on an issue that is as complex as immigration reform, where we need comprehensive immigration reform, the president has abdicated some leadership with that credibility gap. I think it's even stronger in Secretary Nielsen's case, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has been so out front as a spokesman on that line for the White House, to then have the White House, completely shift backwards and do a 180-degree turn on its own position yesterday about where this came from and how it could be resolved and who to address it. I think there are already calls for her to resign over lack of credibility. I think that all hurts the long-term ability to reach resolution on comprehensive immigration reform.
We're talking with Democratic strategist Isaac Wright about the executive order that President Trump signed yesterday that keeps families at the border together. Now, President Trump on Twitter, he's been known to go off a little bit, to say the least.
An understatement.
That's a huge understatement. He said that he blamed Democrats at first for the whole policy of separating the children from their parents. What was your reaction when you saw what he said on Twitter?
Well, it was just sort of incredulous. The president has, as you said, he's been known to go off on Twitter. He's known to sort of struggle with the truth. He and the truth are not close friends. And this was just an unbelievable falsehood. I mean, and such an obvious one that, how does the White House spin this? How can they even plausibly try to convince people that they invented something a matter of weeks ago, but that really it's people in Congress's fault that predated him? It just lacked the logical conceivability. And of course, it didn't last. Yesterday he tacitly admitted, obviously, that was all false and not true, and started to address it, which then leads to that credibility gap at a time when we need leadership if we're going to have comprehensive immigration reform. And it's really, really hard to lead people, whether they're members of Congress or just your friends and allies at a local club or organization, if you don't have credibility. credibility if people don't believe that they can trust what you say.
Isaac, you're a Democratic strategist, so how do you use an issue like this as for your side, if you get what I'm trying to ask you?
Yeah, I think that is a sad statement of American politics that becomes the dialogue, right? Well, how do Republicans how do they solve the gap with the fact that they have created this situation and that people are watching infants torn from their parents? How do Democrats use that politically? This shouldn't be about politics, right?
Yeah.
The president decided to use it as political leverage to vote on the border wall and to blame members of Congress to force them to vote on the border wall, and he put 2,300 children's futures at stake, right? Like, that's just wrong. And it's wrong when he did it. It would be wrong for anybody. You know, this needs to be about American values. We have stood for centuries as a beacon of democracy and human rights, and we are at a tipping point to make the decision, will our country stand for those values going forward or not? You know, the separation of parents from their children, the separation of infants from their mothers at the border was a failure of those values. Yesterday, on World Refugee Day, our country pulled out of the International Human Rights Council and literally withdrew from the fight on human rights with the UN Human Rights Council. That is a failure of our values. We are at a tipping point where we have to decide the direction of our country.
Isaac, I have to cut you off. We're at the top of the hour, but thank you so much for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's good to get to talk.